Hi everyone, this is Ryan Butler. I'm doing the discussion section this week for how neighborhood structural and institutional features can shape neighborhood social connectedness, a multi-level study of adolescent perceptions by Lenzi et al. And yeah, I know it's sort of a mouthful, but basically the crux of that article was to talk about or to highlight the importance of how the very structure of a neighborhood can really influence how a neighborhood functions. And that's something that how we kind of talked about a lot in community psychology. The idea that a lot of these psychological or social issues are beyond just the individual level. It may be something that is community based, or going one step up, be family based and then community based. But here, this article is actually shining a light on the idea that there is a actual infrastructure that will cause an issue or to foster social relationships between people. And a couple of those things that they found in the article were, the first one I want to talk about is the obstacles. And one of the obstacles they talked about was high population density in these neighborhoods. Actually, let me backtrack really quick. So the study actually took place in Italy, in Italian neighborhoods with adolescents who were about 11 to 15 years old. They examined these adolescents' social relationships. And this was assessed via a survey that they gave to them, and they also gave one to their parents as well to see how the neighborhood itself functions. And then furthermore, they actually analyzed these results in terms of the statistical data that they had on the various cities, or excuse me, the cities were located in one municipal area, and it was based on the statistical analysis or of that municipal area that they were able to get access to. But what they were able to glean from the study was that there were three main possible obstacles for the creation of neighborhood social ties. The first being population density. So if there's a high population density, they were noticing that there was a negative relationship with creating neighborhood social ties. Which kind of makes sense given what they talked about, and you just kind of reflecting on it a little bit. If you do have a area that has a lot of people, it's really difficult to actually get to know somebody on an individual basis. They actually talked about in the past research that people from smaller towns tend to foster stronger social ties for that reason, that there's not a lot of people there, so they're able to actually pick out each individual person and to really get to know them on an individual basis. Another thing they talked about was the physical and social disorder of the neighborhood itself. So a physical disorder they defined as basically just the state of the neighborhood. If the neighborhood is in disarray, there's trash everywhere. If the neighborhood is in a poor shape, like the buildings are decrepit, then a lot of the neighborhood social ties are not going to be fostered. And that would actually make sense thinking about it further, because it's really difficult to sort of take pride in your neighborhood and want to participate in your neighborhood if it doesn't, if it's not a welcoming environment. They also talk about social disorder too, which is how the people are behaving or what the typical social norms within that neighborhood, and how they really influence the relationship of the people within those neighborhoods. So they talked about the two biggest ones that stuck out for me were brawling. So if there's constant fighting in the neighborhood, if there's drug dealing, if there's, I don't know if they mentioned it explicitly, but I can also think of those two together, gang activity, it may have a lot of difficulty fostering those social ties. But actually, even taking that further, they found that within adolescence, there was some evidence that they were actually fostering really stronger social ties if there was physical or social disorder, kind of adding credence to the idea that you need to stick together to make it through these tough times, and also maybe providing a little bit of evidence for the reasoning of why gang activities tend to spring up in neighborhoods that have a lot of physical or social disorder. The other thing they talked about that were actually really good factors for fostering neighborhood social ties was was opportunities for activities and meeting places in the neighborhood. They found that these two factors were consistent across all the board that they originally looked at, like neighborhood wealth, the physical social disorder, that these two were actually the ones that tended to foster the greatest social ties between adolescents and the neighborhood at large. So let's check my notes really quick. So the general level of connectedness within the neighborhood was fostered. So the intergenerational closure was something they talked about, which is the knowledge of interaction between the adolescents and the adults. Trust and reciprocity was higher, and then there were adolescents reported more neighborhood friends, and then more personal relationships with their neighborhoods. With their neighbors, when there was more meeting places and there was more opportunities for activities. And that actually got me interested when the article actually pulled up this week. Well, the precise citation, give me a second here. The article I pulled up this week was an article from 2003, which is Anderson, Butcher, Newsom, and Ferrari. Cool names, right? Which looked at participation in boys and girls clubs and relationship to youth outcomes, which actually found a really similar result, wherein just by participating in the boys and girls clubs that were available in neighborhoods, these teenagers actually had greater academic achievement, and that they were able to mitigate the risk of problem behaviors that were associated with their varying age levels. So, the problem behaviors that may be associated with someone who's about 10 to someone who's about 16, 17, 18. And it kind of gives credence to what we've been talking about, kind of reiterate the importance of giving neighborhoods these resources in order to not only foster the social ties and interconnectedness within the neighborhoods, but to also it can also help with academic achievement and also mitigate problem behaviors that children may be facing. So it really shows us, or it really provides evidence of the importance of actually having those structural institutions within neighborhoods. That it really doesn't always come down to just purely individual basis for psychological issues. Looking at what is the greater aspects of the neighborhood and what may factor into the psychological states of individuals we may see as future clinicians. The discussion questions I actually wanted to leave you guys with, and something that made me think about during this reading this article, was number one, how do you feel the structure of your neighborhood influenced your relationships with other people? What was the most important meeting place in your neighborhood? And then as a clinician, what social activities or meeting places could you suggest to foster greater interconnectedness within a neighborhood? I really look forward to seeing your responses on the discussion board, and hope to talk to you guys soon. Thanks for watching.